Hi, my name is Dennis Boyle, and I'm going to be talking to everyone today about the characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. We're going to be focusing on four different characteristics. First category being cognitive and neurological, the second being behavioral and sensory, third being communication and language, and the fourth being social characteristics. So, to get started, some of the cognitive and neurological characteristics in autism spectrum disorder. First, there's delayed cognitive and language skills. There's delayed movement, fine motor skills, slower processing times, and most prevalent neurological characteristics often paired with autism are motor impairment, sleep disorders, and epilepsy. Moving on to like behavioral and sensory characteristics, students or individuals with autism tend to play with toys the same way every time. They get upset with minor changes, and I see this happening in my classroom with one of my students. We have to have a visual schedule for the student, and if there are any changes, um, it needs to be front loaded with the student. um, Typically, we use a timer to let the student know that the transitions are coming, to help with those transitions from one subject to the next. Sometimes negative response to specific sounds. Um, like I work in a behavior classroom, so the kids do have episodes where my student with autism, he requests to use his sound canceling headphones because it gets too loud in the classroom. Um, so he's really good about being able to vocalize, but his feelings and needs, but that could be a characteristic with some students that they struggle with vocalizing their wants and needs. Um, Also having obsessed interest. My one of my students, he always wants to do the same thing or color the same pages or read the same book during independent reading. Um, he's always obsessed with certain things. And then he can get extremely distressed over small changes, like I said, the schedule. And so another common characteristic with students on the spectrum is self-stimulating behaviors, or also known as stimming, and that can look differently depending on the individual. Stimming can include a full body rocking back and forth, slapping of the hands, bouncing, jumping, walking on tiptoes, pulling hair, rubbing, scratching the skin, rearranging different objects or things in their desk, sometimes sniffing. And then in more severe cases, stimming can also cause physical harm, such as head banging, biting, punching, picking scabs, sores, excessive rubbing on the skin, or even swallowing dangerous objects. So that's the behavior and sensory characteristics. And then moving on to like communication and language characteristics. With individuals with autism spectrum disorder, you may see repetitive language, difficulty expressing needs and wants in an appropriate way. Um, Especially with the younger students, they tend to show more behaviors because they don't know how to communicate what their wants and needs are. So it might lead to screaming or throwing a tantrum. Another communication and language characteristic is a lack of eye contact. Um, Also, narrow interest. I had a student last year. He only wanted to read science books or animal based books. That was like the only thing he was interested in. When it came to another topic, like reading comprehension, was out the door. He did not care for it. So and all students with autism are different, but the student I dealt with last year, he when it came to anything with animals or scientific based, he excelled on. If it wasn't that, he didn't have interest and he did not really care for it. But there are various assistive technology tools to help individuals express their wants and needs, or ideas and feelings in various ways. These tools include like visuals, signs, gestures, finger spelling, text to speech or speech to text devices, and also picture communication boards. Um, Years ago, I was instructional assistant in a high school nonverbal classroom, and one of my students had a Forte device, which pretty much he was able to type what he wanted to say because he was nonverbal and speak it through his device, which was pretty cool. So those are just some alternative methods or assistive technology methods or tools that could help with communication and language. And then also going on to social characteristics, some things that may be noticeable is avoids or does not keep eye contact. So students might not keep that eye contact, but that doesn't mean that they're not paying attention. Um, and then expressing difficulties, initiating or responding to social interactions. So may have difficulty with peers or making friends. Show a little interest in peers is another one. Um, does not play games with taking turns. That can be a struggle, as some students want to do things their way or play on their own. And then difficulty with imagination or pretend play. So those are just a few characteristics when it comes to cognitive, neurological, behavior and sensory, communication, language, and social characteristics. Thank you.